And again, thank you to the folks who are hopping on. We'll get started in just one more minute. We'll give a few more folks the opportunity to join us at the start of this presentation. Alrighty, thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. This is a beginner's guide to finding prefab success with lean principles. Today's webinar is being presented by Steve King, Evolved Product Manager and Prefab Consultant. Steve has years worth of real-world experience in the MEP industry and prefab roles. Today, he's going to be discussing lean principles and how to implement lean principles to improve the efficiency of your prefab shop. Now, as a reminder to our audience, this webinar is being recorded and we will forward the recording to all registrants. You can also find all of our webinar recordings on the Evolve YouTube channel. So if you have any questions during the webinar, please submit them using the Q&A function in the Zoom toolbar. And we are going to have time at the end to go through and take a few questions. All right, and with that, I'm handing it over to Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Marina. Thanks everyone for joining the call today. Appreciate your time. Let's see here. Can I not get this? There it goes. So just wanted to give you a little background on kind of my career on the electrical side and the electrical contracting space. I've spent 33 years in the construction industry overall, starting out in the field and then moving up towards the office, and pretty much almost every role I guess you could have in that contracting space I've done at one point or another in my life. So I spent about 33 years in the industry. Well, the last 14 years really focused heavily on the design to fabrication processes. Back in 2006, we kind of began our journey here in that space, understanding back then that this was certainty to be a factor in the construction industry. And so it was a high priority back then for me in 2006 to begin pulling this all together, really basically starting from ground zero. So in 2020, I joined Evolve to begin building our cloud-based products in the shop platform, and really trying to develop digital workflows that I didn't have back then. In fact, in 2006, there wasn't any real programs that we could use to help us out back then, except for your standard Excel sheets and those type of things. But that's why I came here to build our cloud-based products and try to move the industry forward as best that I can. So that's a little bit about me. Today, I'd really like to discuss with you guys three lean principles that I believe are foundational to the long-term success in fabrication. And I'm assuming that most everybody on this call is at some, entry point to fabrication, or have been doing it for a couple of years, and hopefully can take something away from this discussion today. But this is primarily based on my experience, and I've received lean training throughout the years, and implemented a bunch of that in ways in my fab shops over time. But for today, I really wanted to go back to the beginning, and talk about foundational concepts that we first implemented back in 2007, 2008, to really kind of push the shop forward. So that we'll be talking today about workplace organization, so a little bit on fab shop designs and work cells, and the benefits of those types of arrangements in the facility, and 1-point lessons. We'll get into a little bit on that. as much as I have time for today, we'll discuss these topics. But there's a wealth of information out there on these topics. And so what we'll be discussing today will be all we can get into this hour, but you can research this on your own as well. So the objectives for today is just really to present some of this to you, and really show you something that you can implement today in your shop if you haven't already done so, or to give you some other ideas about some of the lean principles we'll discuss here today. Hopefully everybody can take something away from the presentation today. So that's our objectives for today. Hopefully I can achieve that. So when I thought back to 2006 and I thought back to what we had done and what we were trying to do and what we're still trying to do today, this was a important realization for me that wasn't clear initially when I started. We all start we think of fabrication in the same way. Our fab journey pretty much starts in the same way. Just do it in the shop. Let's take it out of the field, and we can do that in the shop, so we just do it. And it kind of starts off that way for everybody. But it took a few years for me to realize that this is not just a job site in a building, which you see written everywhere when you read things about fabrication, electrical fabrication, mechanical. It's like, oh, we do it in a climate controlled building and we do this and we do that. It's safer, and you hear all that stuff. But the reality is it is a manufacturing facility. And that is a key understanding that took a while to learn. And as the shop begins to scale and the prefabrication begins to take hold in your company, you'll reach a point where you can't scale anymore unless you treat it as such. And so I just think this is for everybody on the call that might just be starting out in this. This would be a key takeaway, and really start to think about the differences between the way we do it in the field and the way it needs to be done in a manufacturing facility. So I want to start off with workplace organization, or 5S, in lean terminology. And sometimes you might think of this as, weekly or monthly, or maybe even a yearly cleanup in the facility when it just becomes unbearable anymore. It'll ultimately reach that point of unbearable. It will be unbearable at some point if you don't begin to think about these things. And 5S itself, it's not really just about being clean and organized. That's part of it, but it really was created to solve problems. And so that's really what we'll focus on here in this presentation, is really foundational concepts to solve problems in the facility. So that's why I think this is a great place to start. I think workplace organization is fundamental, and I started here as well. In the past. So today we'll really be discussing the 5 steps in the 5S process, and I encourage you to look into this deeper because I won't be able to cover it all in this presentation. But when you implement 5S to begin, it is foundational, and it will really propel you forward when you start to think about other lean concepts and being able to have the ability to push those into the environment. Without this, it's really difficult to skip this part and get anything further going in terms of lean concepts. And there's a lot of them. But what I like most about this one is really it's super visual, and you will see immediate benefits. And so that's why I feel like it's a real great place to start. I guess the biggest thing here is the last one. It will certainly test your ability to sustain, whether or not you have the desire, the willingness, and kind of the continuous improvement and ability to sustain it. It will test you here on whether or not you can achieve that. And if you do, then you'll be ready for other things going forward. So um, that's really foundational. A little history about this. Before Lean, there was Ford, and he came up with the term Kando, and it really is about the Lean 5S. But back then, Toyota visited Ford in 1950, and they loved what was happening in there, and they basically came to the conclusion that they needed to adopt this American principle back then because they were severely getting outproduced by Henry Ford. Uh, and you could see back then it was like 40 a week, 40 per day versus 8,000. And that's why I say that your shop really is a manufacturing facility. And so um, that's why they visited it. That's why they adopted it. And that's how lean eventually became a thing from the Japanese. So this is kind of a harsh example of what is not lean, right? This is not lean. And the lack of organization in the workplace, it simply it's unworkable and it's unsafe and it's really almost not worth having if it looks like this, in my view. Um, and everybody will be at a certain place in this in this journey, right? Sometimes you might have areas of the shop that looks like this and other areas are super nice. I don't know. There's always you know, some medium between really awful and really good. Um, but kind of some of the questions you want to ask yourself here, I ask myself, because this is how our shop started too. It used to be a storage facility for leftover materials from the job, and I don't know if it was this bad, but it was bad enough, so it doesn't really matter. But some of the kind of questions you would want to ask yourself about this stuff is, can you find what you need when you need it? I always ask myself that, even in a good facility, it's can you find stuff when you need it? I mean, this is a manufacturing facility. You shouldn't have to look for things. Um, why are we always looking for tools and materials and those type of things? Another good one is, why is somebody always asking who took the last thing? Who took the last drill bit or, the last blade for the saw, whatever it is. Why do we always run out? I don't know why, but we'd be asking ourselves those questions. But simply, you cannot be productive in this or efficient in this environment. And so I think all of us can recognize and probably agree that that is true. This would not be a very highly functional facility. But the good news is if you need something to eat, you can just chuck it in that microwave right there. I don't know if it's plugged in or not, but there's an extension cord laying on the floor. You can just plug it in if you need to get something to eat. So that's a good thing about this shop. Um, so how does 5S, how is it going to help you? This is an extreme example of a factory facility that's in really good shape. But it does result in safer and cleaner workplaces. And the real interesting thing about this is you might not think about the morale or the what do the people feel like? And when we first did this, we were really surprised by the result of the cleanup action itself and the ability to involve others in cleaning this place up. And really at the end of it all, it results in a high level of pride in that facility. And we started off with people that came to work there, apprentices or just coming through. And if they worked in the shop, then we'd send them to the field. And if they couldn't make it in the shop, they would never get to the field. But it's really strange. People that came in the shop, they never wanted to leave it anymore. They loved it. They loved the facility. They kept it clean. They loved where they were working and they take pride in it. And I think that's just a side effect of something like this, that you will see it. It will absolutely be a thing. And it'll probably surprise you too. But things are easier. Training is easier, lower costs across the board. Tools and supplies went in where you need them. So this is just one example of you see a kind of a cleaning station board there. That's part of a standard that's created in the 5S process. But this really leads to really great things happening in that facility. So I want to talk about three of the 5S's, the first three. And you can get more detail on these things, but it really results in what it is let's get this place cleaned up at the end of the day. It's all about cleaning up the facility. Um, and it is the easiest of all of them. Everybody can do this. You can clean it up and do these types of things. Um, but I think the most important thing when you think about sorting out stuff, and when we had a work cell type environment, the reality of sorting is get rid of everything that doesn't belong in that space. If it's not being used there, it doesn't belong there, period. There's no need for it. You know, people say, well, we're just storing it there for a week, or it's always been there, so we're not going to move it. It's always been there for 10 years. Well, move it because it ain't going to stay here no more. So those are the type of things where you want to get everything out of that workspace. It doesn't belong. Only the things that are there that are needed in the workspace should be there. So that's what sorting really is involved with. Um, but I really enjoyed doing the set in order. And really the main thing I would think about there and what this is for set in order is really a place for everything and everything in its place. That is key when you think about this, and that makes a lot of sense. If everything has a place and it's there, you can find it when you need it and you can use it, and then you can return it, and we can continue on an efficient type of production operation. So the idea here is organize what remains by neatly arranging them. There's a lot of ways to accomplish this, but I've implemented a lot of these type of things, either tool boards or stations like you see here in this video, in the picture, I'm sorry. And so we'll talk about that in 1 second. And then the shining part of it is really just cleaning up the workspace, making sure that it's clean and presentable. A lot of our customers use their facilities as, it's a pride for them to walk general trades contractors through, or even the field guys to come in and see really what a fantastic operation this is. It says a lot for the company. But I particularly like this board here that's been created for this work cell. And they used a foam cutout type of concept instead of, a shadow board like that. But those are two ways to do it. And here the idea is that only the tools that you need are there, and only in the quantity in which you need them. There's nothing more, nothing less. It's exactly what is needed to do whatever they're doing right there. And you can easily see when something is missing. So that's when you know that tool is gone. Why is it gone? Well, it's not in the workspace anymore. Where is it? I don't know. Well, go find it. It has to be returned there every day. And that's the way it would look at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day. Everything in its place, everything ready for use. And what I liked about this one too is it has the materials underneath it. And that's one way to do it. It has only the materials that are needed for that particular operational step. But what's interesting about this picture here, it's tough to see down in there, but in each one of those little dividers is a tag, a ticket and tag system. And a ticket and tag system is used to ensure that you never run out of whatever that is right there, those screws. So when the quantities start to get low, the operators will take that tag out of the bin and they will put it in the shop manager's order box. And on that card is all the requirements for that part, who we buy it from, what the quantity is that we buy every time we buy it. And when it comes back in, they put the material in the divider and they return the card to its place. And so when you ask yourself, why are we always running out of something? You can't just say, hey, tell me when we're out. That will never work. And so you can scream and yell at people all you want. They just simply aren't going to do it because it's not backed up by a process. And so this is a fundamental way to create a process to ensure that you don't run out of that part. So standardizing is something that is challenging. It's creating standards for your company on the way we do things. This is the way we do it here. And it's key to maintaining the improvements on the first three. So this is the fourth of the 5 S's. And the first three are simple. You can clean up the place and get it organized. But creating standards is the key. You create standardized processes and procedures and methods in the shop so that everybody knows what that is. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, I guess the other key point here would be, standards can be visual, which I like. When you look at the visual standard, you automatically know when it's not right. And so this really just enables your team members to do things the way it's supposed to be done. It creates a standard for your company. Not every company's the same. And you make the standards to what you want to have done. And I've seen a lot of these type of standards really even outside of the fab shop. For example, I've seen standards on the office break room kitchen sink because everybody would come into the break room and they would leave their dirty dishes in the sink and they don't wash them. So people would get PO'd about that and complain about it. Well, they just created a standard, and the picture was leave the sink empty, wash your dishes, put them in the rack. I mean, you'd be surprised, but you actually have to tell people to do that. And so the company didn't want a sink full of dishes in their break room. So that's the standard that they created. Um, Another good one would be like I see it a lot of times. We had one at our place too, because you go into the conference room and nobody knows how to operate the equipment in the conference room. They don't know how to turn it off. They don't know how to turn it on. They don't know how to connect up to it. So I've seen standards for that and 1 point lessons that show you how to connect up when you want to use the conference system. So there's just a lot of things that you can standardize outside of the shop as well for the company that makes life better for everybody. And so that's really the point of standardization, is starting to figure out what do we want and how do we achieve that. And so that's part of it. So this is an easy one if you think about real life. This is a standard. Uh, Parking lots have standard dimensions and design specifications, which we all know. And so, but it's not hard to recognize when this is wrong. That car ain't parked right, period. And so it's easy to see what the standard is because the line defines the standard, but the car is not parked right. And that's also very easy to see. So that is the benefit of visual standards that you'll create in your shop that can immediately expose that condition that's unacceptable. That's really what the visual standards are all about. So that's just an example that you can take away and understand the standard, what the marking standards really are. But what does that really look like in a fab shop? For me, it came down to you know floor marking standards, which we did early on in the process when we laid out our shop and we determined what all the work cells were going to be, where they were located in the shop. And these standards took into account not just production workspaces, but it also took into consideration safety and aisleways and traffic and routing for forklifts and trucks, storage of everything in the facility. What is the standard? And so we defined those with these colored markings on the floor. And interestingly enough, when we did this, at the time, we were under some lean consulting guides, consultants who were working with us as well. And coming out of this, on a weekly basis, we used to have the shop leaders in each work cell. They would actually mop these lines and keep them clean, and they would repair them when they got damaged. And so the reason for that was we wanted them to take ownership in this, and we wanted them to understand what the value of that marking was. And so we took care of them. We cleaned them up, and it just is a way of starting to change the culture in the facility. That we do have to care for things, and we do have to take care and keep a clean environment to do work in. And so that was part of the floor marking standards. But I love that. And you see it in a lot of fab shops today. This is not anything new, but it really does help you in keeping that shop organized and getting it set up for success from the jump. So that was our floor marking standards were defined right there, what each line meant. So kind of moving forward, in the last part of the 5S is the sustain one, and that is truly the hardest one. And if you don't get this done and you don't have the ability to sustain it, everything you've done up to this point will fall apart fast. It'll be gone as soon as you blink an eye. Every day the shop gets messy and dirtier, and every day it needs to be cleaned up and organized and kept into operational standards. So sustaining is the most important and most difficult part. But really, you want to make this, habit forming for the company. It is a culture shift. You do need to get everybody on board. It is a way of life in the facility, and it's the way you do business. It's the way your company wants to be perceived in the industry. And when people walk into the facility, trust me, they know when they see something special, and that's very apparent. And it is a really good thing for the company overall. But this is not something. I think the most important point here is this isn't something you do occasionally. It's done on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and it's done based on the standards that you've created. So a simple standard could be about the cleanliness of that work cell. So you would have, you need to audit this. So we would use audit scorecards. There's all kinds of them. You can create your own. But essentially, on the scorecard, we would evaluate each work cell on a weekly basis. And so we would come down, the lead in the work cell would do the evaluation. We would tour it at the end of the week. And on Friday, I'd walk through the shop and say, hey, is this place, is it meeting our standards at the end of the week? And then we would keep up with it every week. We'd do it. And it's really not hard when you tap the resources of all the people that are in the shop working in there. You can get this done, and you can sustain the cleanliness of that shop for sure through standards and audits. And so we would score ourselves. We would post those scores. We would find winners and losers, and we would do things for the best work cell, whatever. You can make it fun at the same time that you have to keep up with this stuff. So there's a lot of ways you can do it. But this by far is the most important thing that you need to do. So we're going to jump in and talk about work cells, but I think, Marina, that you could send out a poll question if you wanted to. Might be a good place for that.
Great. We've got a poll question up asking, how are you currently tracking fabrication orders? All right, I'm just giving everyone a minute to put in their answers, and then I can share the results. But we've got a lot of people saying Excel, or that they're doing it manually on with paper and whiteboard.
Mhm.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and share these answers. All right, and we've got 24% saying they are using manual process, 33% using Excel. A smaller percentage of folks on Smartsheet are using in-house tools, Trello. Just a couple of folks on Syskew and M Suite, and 15% said other.
Great. Thanks for that. Yeah, just take a look at questions. Nothing there yet, so I'll continue on. Thanks for your poll answers there. So I want to jump in and talk a little bit about work cells, and what some thoughts around that about when I was creating them and how we set those up and the purpose of them. Let's see, why is this not advancing? Okay, here we go. So the work cells is a good way to organize the shop and segment it into areas of work that has the equipment and materials and tools that are needed in the production process. And really, these are designed to minimize motion and reduce the time and effort to produce the production, to finish the product. I did love to set them up in U-shaped patterns when I could. And that seemed to be the best for me, but there's other ways to do it. Can be straight lines as well, but you'll figure out what works best for you. But I did like the U-shaped pattern to it, so that's kind of the way I designed the facilities that I built out over time. Um, and really, what I like about it is that it centralizes the work and it advances, like the people that work in that work cell are working on the same type of tasks with the same requirements, the same standards, and they're working together, and really it produces you know efficiencies from being close together doing the same type of work in that work cell. So I liked it a lot for that. And I also liked it from a quality controls perspective. It's easier when the work is contained in a certain area to get those inspections, to get that stuff taken care of. And I don't have a lot of talking, and I'm not going to talk a lot about quality control today, or lean standards and processes that can be used to improve that. But I will say on that front that quality control was, in fact, the hardest problem to solve and maintain consistency and accuracy in the fab shops I've been involved with. We didn't have any more or less than anybody else probably has, but it was just the hardest problem to solve. And it was hard to solve it permanently. So we could solve it on an instance level, QC problem. That's easy. Everybody can do that. But solving systemic quality problems were difficult. And those require different problem solving techniques to do it. But that was, in fact, the hardest thing that we had to do, was make sure the quality was right. And it was really based on our quality standards that we just simply would not ship product to the field that wasn't of a higher quality than they could create themselves on job sites. So we had pretty strict standards for quality, and I think that is worth it for sure. But it's tough in the shop too to get that done. But one of the things we had here, we had some standards around work cells. We created standards for those too. And one of those standards would be that that the material required in the production space was not more than 10 feet from that space. So that was our standard because we didn't want movement of people around the shop for no reason. So it had to be 10 feet from the space. So we created inbound material staging zones in each work cell, which you can see here in this on the picture there. All inbound material was handled, and it was stationed inside of those green lines. Those green lines related back to our floor marking standards. Those green lines mean that's where incoming material goes, period. That's it. Nothing could be in that area that was not needed for production in that space. And then on the other side of that was the outbound staging. So anything going out of this space was within the orange stripe markings, and that is finished fabrication that needs to get out of the work cell. It might be internally routed to another station, or it might be routed to the shipping warehouse, but it was outbound. And so we defined that very clearly. And that was related to our floor marking color codes that everybody understood in the fab shop. Another standard would be that nothing could be on that line or over the line. So the pallets had to be in the space that was defined for it. So that's why those spaces are set to a pallet dimension. And you just couldn't leave things laying around because trucks are moving, forklifts are moving. That material needed to be within the space defined for it, and it couldn't be on the lines. Those lines needed to be kept clear at all times. A lot of reasons for that. Safety is one of them, but those are our standards. And it takes a little bit of work, but you can get to that point where everybody is following and understands those standards. One of the other things that I really liked about the work cell lead, the work cell was, and I didn't do this initially, but eventually I came to this, conclusion that each work cell needed a lead. And so we couldn't, when we had the shop without the leads in the work cells, it was hard to keep the cleaning and everything up to date in those work cells. So the standards, it was tough to get that done across the 50,000 square foot facility without individuals in the work cells that were the leaders of those work cells. And it wasn't really only about keeping that area clean. That's one of their responsibilities. But they were the person that knew everything about that work cell and what production was happening inside that cell. And anybody working in that cell did not go find the shop manager to ask a question. The question was first directed to the work cell lead. If the work cell lead could not answer the question, the workers, the shop operators remained in production if they could, and the work cell lead would go seek the answer from the shop manager. We would not have people walking all over our facility trying to track down Joe, who knows everything about a 50,000 square foot facility, right? The shop manager that wears a Superman cape and runs around that facility all day long solving problems. So the work cell lead was responsible for that, and he or she was responsible for everything that happened in there: safety standards, quality, productivity, training on the processes, training on the equipment. Some areas of our shop had equipment that what could be unsafe if you weren't trained properly to use it. Any equipment that somebody wasn't trained for, we would have a list of people and their picture who were allowed to operate that machinery. If you didn't appear on that list and your picture was not on it, you would not be operating that equipment. And so these are just some standards that we had, but that work cell lead is key to keeping that area operating properly, and really helped us out. We would just simply hang up a banner or a sign, this is the person, her name on it, his name on it, whatever. This is the name of the work cell, and this is who you go find when you need something in that work cell. It really works well. And I enjoyed that. Once we decided to do that, it really was a good thing. So that's a little bit on work cells. Oh, the other last point of this really, I think I mentioned it, but it is your first line of problem solvers in the shop. So you got 20 work cells in your shop, you really have 20 first line problem solvers, and putting them to work on solving problems inside of their space is a great thing. So that was how we handled that. So kind of let me see how we're doing. We're doing pretty good on time. So 1 point lessons are a way to show the standard and to train on the standard and show the requirements for that standard. And these would be hanging in the shop, or like I said, somebody had, a kitchen sink here that showed the left side had a big red X on it, said, had a picture of dirty dishes in the sink, and the other side had no dishes, and it was the way it was supposed to be. So, with this 1 point lesson, it really defines what the standard is. It's very visual. You keep this 80% visual, 20% words, but the point of this is, a picture's worth 1,000 words. And that's why this is 80% visual and 20% words. People don't read the words. And so a picture tells them the story very quickly. And these would be created by a lot of people in our shop, and it could be a work cell lead. It could be a shop manager, could be some executive teams or operations guys, whatever it was. But these were all over our facility. It tells you the right way to do it, and it tells you what is wrong. But when you look at it, if it's right or wrong. And so these are worth taking a look at. There's many applications for this, QA, QC, maintenance. We would have machinery that needed maintenance, or how do you change a blade on this machine? Well, we would have a 1 point lesson for that, because we don't have time to take out the owner's manual or Google it online. We need to know how to change the blade and fix it and do it properly. And so we would create a 1 point lesson on how to change the blade so that we knew it was done properly, and that it was done when it was needed. So we didn't waste time. trying to Google something or find the manual, and it takes 5 minutes to change the blade, but we spent 35 minutes trying to figure it out. So 1 point lessons are excellent for that. Really simple to put together. There's no magic in this. It simply is printed on a piece of paper, laminated, and hung up in the workspace somewhere, wherever it is highly visible in the area in which it's needed. And that's really what we had. We had a lot of these things all over the facility. So these are a great way to train and teach your standard to everybody in the shop. Some kind of key points to this one. You know, it's only 1 point that you're trying to make on one sheet of paper. You shouldn't make, hey, here's 5 things that you need to do on. If that's the case, make 5 1-point lessons. Don't combine them. It's got to be super simple. Somebody should be able to look at it and understand it within 3 or 4 minutes. If you can't, it's not right. And so rework it, make it simple, use photographs, but I mean, it's instant when you see it. You know what's right, you know what's wrong. And heck, I tried to get my kids to pick up their laundry in the bathroom. I probably should have hung up one of these things and said, "Don't leave your clothes on the floor." Right? I don't know, but it works, and it's a good thing to create these and just start doing it. So really, this is really what 5S can do for you, and it shows extremes. And somewhere we're in the middle, or maybe we're at the best of the best. But that's up to you and how you do it. But the reality is, 5S principles will take you from just a disaster type looking place and turn it into something that you can be proud of. And that is how really you need to do it. And it's a long journey, and it's tough, but it's worth every hour that you will spend doing it. And so, that's really why it's foundational in my mind. I think back to all the things that we did. We tried a lot. We're not Toyota. We're not trying to build, first class vehicles or whatever, but we are trying to do fabrication in a manufacturing environment. So I just really tried to think about what principles. I learned a lot about lean, but I didn't implement them all in the shop. I mean, if we had time and people, we could probably do more, but we always tried to do what we could do. And this is one of the most important ones that you'll do. If you don't have this, like, really think about it and get going on it, because it changes your life in the shop. So I know hopefully we've got some people on the call today that are new, starting in their journey. This will really help you. So I want to kind of close up with some closing thoughts on this, and really, this is what it is to me. It definitely is a long-term way of thinking. It really needs to come from the top of the organization. This is, from the president or owner down to all the departments. And it is a different way of thinking, and it is a cultural shift, and it is hard, and it is worth it. But really, you got to be intentional about it. It's really just a commitment to this. If you don't commit to the 5S, and you don't carry it through or see it through, you will just have wasted your time and a lot of resources on it. You'll have to start again. And I'm not saying if you fail first, obviously get up, pick yourself up, and do it again. But it takes a bit to get it going, but it's super well worth it. So that's just kind of my thoughts on that part of lean and those 3 concepts. So just some closing thoughts. We have Evolve Shop. That's what I do. It's kind of the product that we're working on building. I encourage you guys to take a look at it. I'm not going to sit here and try to sell it on this webinar, but we do have it. It does help you with processes in the fab shop, and when you're ready, I'm really ready to talk to you about it. If we can help you, love to do that. But kind of to wrap it up, thank you everybody for jumping on the call. Marina, I'll pass it back to you. We got a couple minutes here. Take some questions if we have time. Yeah.
Great. We have one more poll question too, so we'll give
Oh,
everyone
I'm sorry, I missed you.
to
Yeah.
oh, no worries. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll give everyone a minute to get those questions in and we'll run this second poll. So, of the options listed below, which would you most like to improve or solve in your shop? Would it be collaboration and visibility, tracking of deliverables to the field, order prefab from the field, your shop efficiency overall, getting on a paperless digital workflow, bill of materials issues, that's one we hear a lot, or delivery scheduling and tracking. Great, looks like we're getting some answers here. A lot of folks saying collaboration and visibility is a big issue. And our other top answer here looks like it's going to be a paperless digital workflow. Great. I'll leave that open for just one more minute. And looks like we got a question here for you, Steve.
Sure.
What are some challenges you've had trying to implement lean principles? You know, do you run into folks who are maybe not buying in on the process? What have you struggled with when trying to implement lean process?
Yeah, that's a good, really good question. I think, um, and early on, it absolutely is, um, will people buy into the process? And that's why I mentioned in the call that it really does need to come from the top of the organization so that, um, it's backed by the executive team to achieve this goal. And there is pushback from people. Um, and some people, quite frankly, they don't like change, right? There's just people that are willing to change. There's people that don't want to change. They want to just do it the way they've always done it. It is a challenge, but the key to it is to involve them in the process, make them feel like they are in the process, let them contribute to the process, and you have to kind of fold them in and pull them in one at a time. Now, as I think back, certainly I didn't get that from everybody on the team. You will not get everybody on the team to, they'll say they don't care. They don't want to do it any other way. But at some point, it really came down to, all right, we have a direction from the owner that this is what we need to achieve. We're going to achieve it. And so at some point in time, it comes down to you may have to let some people go that you don't want to let go. And I know it's hard to say, but it's reality because we were creating, and this was over time, giving them plenty of time to jump on board. And but at the end of the day, we got to have everybody on the boat paddling it in the same direction. And at some point, if they don't want to do that, they just got to get off the boat. And it unfortunately it comes down to that. And we basically said, look, this is the way we do it here. And there's plenty of opportunity for you to work in this industry, but you can't work here because this is not the way we do it anymore. And so our long-term goals superseded our willingness to put up with that nonsense over time. But it's tough. That is one of the toughest things for sure.
Great. Thank you for that
Yeah.
answer. We got another question here. Do you offer custom solutions for fabrication shops that have limited square footage?
Yeah. Well, what I can say about that is it's funny because in lean was developed in Japan. You don't have any land. You don't have 100,000 square foot buildings. You just don't have it.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
it was, you can do a lot with a small facility, but if you do have a small facility, everything needs to be mobile. You're not going to be able to set up, permanent work cells, but you can. I remember my first fab shop was 6,000 square feet, but man, we put a lot of work out of a 6,000 square foot building. And the problem with it, people say we need a bigger building. Well, the first question you need to ask yourself is, why don't we clean up the building we have? Because if I give you more space and you don't have 5S principles, all you will do is have a bigger mess. And so having a bigger building is not always the answer because you'll just have a bigger mess. And so you've got to understand these principles. And then when you have that, you say, okay, we need more space, very clear. But I've seen big buildings, man. People have 75,000 square foot warehouse. You couldn't walk through the place. I mean, it's unbelievable. So even if you got it, sometimes smaller is better. You got to just be flexible and mobile. Everything on carts and wheels, and you can stand up a work cell and you can take it down very quickly. But there's challenges around it, but there's also things you can do to get past that. So yeah, great question. I hope I answered that well enough.
Great. And we have a question here asking, will the recording be available or be shared? Yes, absolutely. We'll send out the recording to all registrants, but you can always find our recordings, past webinars, and demonstrations on the Evolve MEP YouTube channel. So make sure to go check us out over on YouTube and give us a follow.
Yeah. Um, Reach out to me anytime you want. I mean, I love to talk to our customers about fabrication. Um, whether you're a customer of ours or not, if you have some questions and I can help you, by all means, just shoot me an email or something like that. No problem.
Great. I dropped your email in the chat for
Oh,
anyone who
perfect.
would like
Thank
to
you.
reach out to Steve. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Got a- Yeah, we got another question here. This person
All
says,
right.
we're new to prefab and have not set up any workflows, shop, or equipment stations. What are things we should do to get started? Should we do first?
Yeah, I would start out by laying out the shop and mapping it out from a workflow perspective. How does work come into the facility? How does work get out of the facility? And how does it flow through the work cells? And that's really the first step to getting that shop off the ground. And I would not get stuck on trying to be perfect, because you're not going to be perfect the first time out of the gate, but you need a plan for the facility and you have to have something to work with. And so getting people together in your organization, building a small team of people that have knowledge in the space, and bring them all together and kind of kick that around. And I've been lucky enough to work with a few customers of ours on that type of process. Um, and that's really where you need to start. Get the people together, start figuring out how we're going to do this, get a plan together, but be willing to move off that plan once you start, because the plan's it's just a place to start. It won't be where you end up, but it's a must. When don't just start throwing materials and equipment and tools in a building, because that is what I was saying earlier. It's not a job site in the building. It is a manufacturing facility. And the sooner you can real understand that, you'll be far better off. You're going to save yourself years of pain and suffering, because you didn't really think of it that way. We just said, hey, okay, we can throw a bender in the shop and we can bend pipe. Well, yeah, of course you can. They can bend it in the field too. And so, that's really where I'd start with design, getting people together and get a group of people and, start from there. But yeah, reach out to me. I can send you some sample stuff that I've just put together for demo purposes. If it would help, I'd share it with you. Yeah, a lot to do. Just starting out. Sure is a lot to do. But
Thank-
it's great. It's great to get going for sure.
That's great, Steve. Yeah, with so much to think about, right? It can be hard to know where to even begin.
Yeah, it's overwhelming a little bit, but it's a necessity, and it's an absolute. I see it as just an absolute requirement to succeed today, and for a lot of reasons, labor one of them. But I mean, it's just a better way of doing business at the end of the day. You start off, people resist it and they push back against it. You got to climb. If you're just starting out in fabrication too, you got to climb the hill. I mean, this is a journey, and it takes years. This is not something you'll achieve in a year. It took us 3 to 5 years to really get to the top of that mountain with a lot of hard work. But you know what? We had a lot of success along the way. We learned a lot, but it is not something you can just roll out and get done in a year's time. It really is commitment to a long-term process.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Great. And let's take this last question here. Jay asks, we're moving from a 4,500 square foot shop to a 19,000 square foot shop. Wow, congrats. Big
Yeah.
expansion. He asks, would you be willing to look at our layout and give your opinion?
Yeah, like I said, hit me on the email that they threw in the chat, and schedule a call with me. I'd love to talk to you. I mean, absolutely. Um, we talk at a high level about it. If I can offer anything to you, I certainly will. Just reach out. Yep.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for attending our webinar today. We hope that you found the information valuable. Please make sure to follow Evolve on social media to keep up with all things MEP and prefab.
Okay.
I'm repeating myself here, but I just want to let you know we'll be sending out the recording, and you can always find more recordings, demos, past webinars on the Evolve YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Thank you,
All right. Well,
Steve.
everybody, have a great day. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.